Before the war, America moved slowly in familiar rhythms, mornings filled with coffee poured at kitchen tables, afternoons shaped by routines that had not changed in generations. Women lived inside expectations passed down like heirlooms, quiet, invisible, unquestioned, their lives measured in meals, cleaned rooms, folded laundry, and dreams postponed until someday that rarely came. Factories stood tall, but distant places where men worked, where noise and steel belonged to another world, another identity. Women watched from the edges, believing what they were told, that strength was not theirs, that danger was not theirs, that history would pass them by. Then the sky cracked open, and everything changed. Pearl Harbor was not just an attack, it was a rupture, a moment when certainty collapsed and fear flooded into every home. Radios carried voices, shaking with urgency. Newspapers screamed war had arrived, and with it an emptiness as men left uniforms, replacing work clothes, goodbye kisses lingering too long at doorways, mothers, daughters, wives watching backs disappear down streets carrying rifles and hope. And suddenly the machines fell silent. Assembly lines stopped moving, and a nation realized it could not fight a global war with half its people missing. At first the question was whispered, then spoken, then shouted: who will do the work? Who will build the planes, the ships, the weapons? Who will keep the heartbeat of industry alive? And slowly, reluctantly, eyes turned toward women, who had never been asked before, who had never been invited into those spaces, who had been told their hands were too soft, their bodies too weak, their minds too fragile. But war does not wait for comfort, and survival does not care about tradition. Posters appeared, bright, bold, commanding, showing women smiling, strong sleeves, rolled up hair, rapt eyes steady, telling them they were needed, that their country depended on them. Radio voices followed, newspapers, films, all repeating the same message. This was not just work, it was duty, it was patriotism, it was sacrifice. And for many women, fear tangled with something unfamiliar, excitement, possibility. A door cracked open just enough to see another life on the other side. The first day in the factory was overwhelming, the air thick with heat and metal, the sound constant, pounding, drilling, grinding like thunder, trapped indoors, machines taller than houses, lights, harsh shadows, sharp. A young woman stands there, heart racing, hands trembling, wondering if she has made a terrible mistake. But she does not turn around, because somewhere far away someone she loves is fighting, and this is how she can help. They teach her quickly, because there is no time. Mistakes cost lives. She learns to read blueprints, to handle tools heavier than anything she has held before. Her muscles ache, her ears ring, her clothes smell of oil and smoke. But each day she grows steadier, stronger, more confident. She learns that fear fades when purpose takes its place. She learns that competence is powerful, that mastery changes how you see yourself. She is not alone. Women flood into factories, shipyards, airfields, defense plants, coming from farms, cities, reservations, immigrant neighborhoods, colleges, and kitchens. Black women, Latino women, Asian American women, Native women, all stepping into roles denied to them for generations. Many face hostility, segregation, unequal pay, yet they show up anyway, because the war does not pause for prejudice, and neither do they. Inside these factories, something unexpected happens. Friendships form across lines that once felt immovable. Women share lunches, stories, laughter, exhaustion. They learn each other's names, accents, histories. They rely on each other, watch each other's backs, celebrate small victories, mourn losses together. Strength becomes collective, not loud, not boastful, but steady, dependable. The work is relentless. Shifts stretch long into the night. Accidents happen. Injuries are common. Exhaustion constant. But complaints are rare, because everyone understands the stakes. Every rivet, every weld, every finished machine carries a piece of them across oceans. Each bolt tightened is a promise that someone might come home alive. Money changes everything. For the first time, many women earn their own paychecks. They open bank accounts, support families, make choices, feel independence settle into their bones. It is intoxicating and terrifying and empowering. They walk differently, speak differently, dream differently, knowing they are capable of more than they were ever told. Rosie the Riveter is born not as one woman, but as millions. She is tired, strong, proud, uncertain, brave. She wears pants, ties her hair back, wipes sweat from her brow, and keeps going. She redefines femininity, not as fragility, but as resilience, not as decoration, but as contribution. She proves that identity is not fixed, it evolves when given space. As the war drags on, sacrifice deepens. Letters arrive carrying news of lost factories. Pause for moments of silence, then resume, because stopping is not an option. Grief becomes another weight carried quietly. Determination hardens. Victory finally comes. Celebrations erupt. Relief pours into streets. But beneath the joy, another change begins. Men return, and the nation shifts again. Women are thanked, praised, then asked to step aside, to return home, to give back the jobs they mastered. Many comply, because they must, because pressure is heavy, because options are limited, but something inside them resists, because they know what they have done, who they have become. Rosie is folded into memory, turned into nostalgia, but the impact remains seeds planted deep, waiting for future generations to find them. And this is where the story continues not as history, but as inheritance. She was born into chains before she could understand the meaning of freedom. Her name was not hers, her body was not hers, her future was written by someone else. Before she ever learned to speak, she woke each day to fear not the sudden kind, but the constant heavy kind that lives in the air, in the silence, in the way people move carefully, so they do not attract pain. Harriet Tubman was not born a hero. She was born enslaved in Maryland, surrounded by cruelty disguised as order, by violence passed off as discipline by a system that crushed hope before it could grow. She watched families torn apart, mothers screaming, children dragged away, men disappearing never to return, and she learned early that survival required silence, strength, and something deeper than fear. When she was still a child, a blow meant for another struck her head, metal crashing into bone, darkness swallowing light, and from that moment her life changed. She suffered seizures, visions, pain that never fully left her, but in that broken space something powerful took root. She spoke of dreams, voices, guidance, faith that burned brighter than terror. She believed she was protected, that she was chosen not for comfort but for purpose. Escape was not a single decision, it was a war inside her heart. Stay and live in chains, or run and risk death. One night she chose the darkness. She walked alone, guided by stars, by whispers, by faith. Each step forward a betrayal of everything she had been taught, each breath stolen from a world that claimed ownership over her body. When she crossed into freedom, she did not celebrate, she did not rest, because freedom tasted bitter, knowing so many were still trapped behind her. Most people would have stayed safe, hidden. Grateful Harriet turned back. She returned to hell again, and again, walking hundreds of miles through forests, swamps, towns, guided fugitives. By night hid them, by day trusted no one, feared nothing. She carried a gun not for violence, but for resolve, because turning back meant death, and she would not allow fear to steal freedom from those who followed her. She led the Underground Railroad, not as myth, but as mission. Children, elders, mothers, fathers, all moving in silence, hearts pounding. Soldiers hunting rewards posted her face, described her as dangerous. She became the most wanted woman in the South, yet she was never captured, never lost a single soul, because she believed failure was not an option. Freedom was worth everything. During the Civil War, she did not step aside. She became a spy, a nurse, a scout, leading raids, freeing hundreds. More, she stood where women were never meant to stand, making decisions, shaping outcomes, changing history without permission. After the war, she lived in poverty, ignored by the nation she helped save, yet she never stopped giving, opening her home, caring for the elderly, speaking for justice, until her final breath. Harriet Tubman was small in stature, but larger than fear, stronger than chains, louder than history tried to silence. She proved that bravery is not absence of fear, but movement through it, that freedom is not a gift but a fight, and that one woman walking back into darkness can change the destiny of a nation. The bus is crowded, tired bodies pressed together after long days of work, the air heavy with routine and resignation. Rules hang invisible, but absolute, telling people where they belong, where they do not, who must move, and who may stay seated. And in the middle of this ordinary evening sits a woman who looks unremarkable, quiet, composed, her purse on her lap, her feet aching, her spine straight. This is not the beginning of a revolution, it looks like the end of a workday. Rosa Parks was not loud, she was not impulsive, she was not seeking attention. She was a seamstress, a wife, a churchgoer, a woman who had spent her life watching injustice stitched into everyday moments. She had seen humiliation passed from generation to generation, like an inheritance. She had followed the rules long enough to know they were designed to erase dignity, one small demand at a time. When the bus driver tells her to stand to give her seat to a white passenger, something inside her does not break, it settles. It becomes still. Later, she would say she was not physically tired. She was tired of giving in, tired of being pushed, tired of living small in a country that promised freedom. She does not raise her voice. She does not argue. She simply says no. That word lands heavier than any shout. The bus freezes, time stretches. Police are called, hands grip batons, laws are cited. She is arrested, fingerprinted, photographed, treated like a criminal for the simple act of remaining seated. And in that moment the world does not change immediately, but a line has been crossed, and it cannot be uncrossed. Rosa Parks becomes a symbol overnight, but the reality is harsher. She loses her job, receives threats, struggles. Financially, her family suffers pressure, fear follows her footsteps. History often forgets that courage carries consequences long after headlines fade. Yet she does not regret the choice, because she understands that dignity once claimed cannot be surrendered. The Black community responds not with violence, but with unity. Buses are boycotted day after day. People walk miles to work, rain, heat, exhaustion, bending backs. But strengthening resolve. Churches organize carpools, meetings, speeches, strategy. Hope becomes collective. What began as one woman staying seated becomes a city standing up. Young leaders rise, voices sharpen, one of them a young minister named Martin Luther King Jr., but Rosa Parks does not fade into the background. She remains steady, present, reminding everyone that movements are built not only by speeches, but by quiet acts that refuse to cooperate with injustice. The boycott lasts over a year. Pressure mounts, courts intervene, segregation laws begin to crack. And though the victory is not complete, it is undeniable. Something fundamental has shifted. A message has been sent that ordinary people can challenge extraordinary wrongs. Rosa Parks never sought fame, she sought fairness. She spent the rest of her life working for civil rights, youth dignity, speaking softly. But carrying the weight of history, her courage was not a moment, it was a lifetime of preparation, a lifetime of choosing self-respect over safety. She showed the world that bravery does not always march, sometimes it sits still, that resistance does not require fists, only resolve, that one woman refusing to move can force a nation to reconsider where it stands. This is the true life story of Rosa Parks, not just the woman on the bus, but the woman who understood that change begins when someone decides that enough is enough and chooses dignity, even when the cost is high. The runway stretches ahead, empty and uncertain. The engine hums like a restless heart. The wind presses against fabric and bone, and a woman sits alone in a cockpit where doubt has no room to breathe. Amelia Earhart does not look back because the sky has already claimed her. She grew up restless, drawn to motion, to machines, to horizons that refused to stay still. At a time when women were told to remain grounded, she felt alive only when speed and risk erased expectation. Airplanes were new, dangerous, unreliable, and thrilling, and when she first left the ground, something inside her locked into place, as if the world finally made sense. They told her flying was not proper, not safe, not suitable. They said fear should keep her earthbound, but fear never owned her curiosity. Did she trained quietly, worked tirelessly, studied mechanics, weather, navigation, learned to trust her instincts, and her hands she flew, whenever she could, chasing distance records, firsts that were treated like curiosities rather than achievements, yet each flight carved space for women who would follow. Fame came quickly after she crossed the Atlantic. As a passenger, at first praised as a symbol, while men held the controls, she accepted the spotlight, but not the limits. She returned to the cockpit, determined to earn every mile herself. When she later crossed the Atlantic solo, she did it through storms, icing, exhaustion, and isolation, landing not with spectacle, but with proof. She used her visibility like a tool, advocating for women in aviation, in science, and ambition. She spoke of equality not as theory, but as practice, insisting that opportunity must match talent. She encouraged women to study engineering, to fly, to build, to lead. Her voice steady, her presence undeniable. Records followed, altitude, speed, distance, each one a quiet argument against doubt. She failed, sometimes crashed, sometimes retreated, but always returned smarter, stronger, clearer about the cost of pushing edges. She understood that progress is negotiated with risk, and that fear shrinks when faced directly. The world watched as she planned the greatest journey, yet a flight around the globe, tracing the equator, a test not of fame, but of endurance, preparation, patience. She trained, mapped, calculated, partnered with a navigator, and lifted off, knowing the margin for error was thin and the stakes immense. Over the Pacific, the sky widened, radio signals weakened, clouds closed in, and then she vanished, leaving questions, echoes, and a silence that history never fully filled. Search efforts scoured oceans, theories multiplied, grief lingered. But what remained was not mystery alone, it was momentum. Amelia Earhart became more than a pilot, she became permission. She showed generations that the horizon does not belong to one gender, that courage can be methodical, that adventure can be disciplined, that disappearance does not erase impact. Her legacy lives in every woman who studies flight, who takes the controls, who trusts preparation over permission, who understands that bravery is not reckless, it is deliberate, it is earned, one calculation, one risk, one takeoff at a time. She did not wait for the sky to invite her, she claimed it, and in doing so she widened it for everyone who followed. The world searched the oceans, but the sky had already written its answer. Amelia Earhart was never meant to land quietly. Her life had always been motion, risk, unanswered questions, and the courage to move forward. Even when the path disappeared, she became a mystery, but more than that, she became a mirror reflecting humanity's hunger to push beyond limits. Before the final flight, there were months of disciplined preparation, failure, recalculation. She knew the danger better than anyone. Every map carried uncertainty, every fuel calculation carried doubt. Yet she trusted work over fear, preparation over superstition. She understood that courage without discipline was recklessness, and she refused to be reckless. She trained her body and her mind, waking early, studying weather patterns, learning radio navigation, practicing emergency procedures again. And again she knew that a woman would not be forgiven mistakes the way men were, so she aimed for excellence, not applause. She wanted the journey to speak for itself. People watched her not just with admiration, but with skepticism, waiting for failure, waiting for proof that ambition had gone too far. She felt it in interviews and headlines, in the way questions were framed. Yet she smiled, answered calmly, and returned to the cockpit, because the sky did not care about opinions, only ability. As the journey progressed, exhaustion grew, landings blurred together, crowds cheered and doubters whispered. The world felt both smaller and more dangerous. Each mile logged was a negotiation with weather mechanics and fate. She adapted, rerouted, waited when patience was required, and pushed when momentum mattered. Over open water, isolation pressed hard, the sky and sea blending into endless blue, radio static, crackling silence, stretching time. This was where fear lived, not in crowds, not in headlines, but in the quiet moments when only skill stood between survival and disappearance. She had prepared for this solitude, she welcomed it. She thought often of women watching from below, girls who had been told no too many times. She knew they were listening to every update, imagining themselves in that cockpit, and she felt responsibility, not pressure, but purpose. She flew not to prove superiority, but possibility. When contact was lost, the world froze. Hope clung to radio signals, rumors, sightings, prayers. Nations searched, planes, ships, men scanning waves for signs. But the ocean keeps its secrets, and the sky does not return what it claims. Yet disappearance did not diminish her presence, it amplified it. Amelia Earhart became a question that refused to fade, a challenge to history itself, reminding us that some lives are not defined by endings, but by the distance they create. Her work continued. Without her organizations she founded, continued supporting women pilots. Scholarships carried her name. New records were broken by women who cited her as their first inspiration. Aviation schools, classrooms, museums, all echoed with her legacy, not as tragedy, but as momentum. She taught the world that bravery is built not in moments of glory, but in hours of preparation, that equality is not requested, it is demonstrated, that failure is not fatal if purpose remains intact. Even today, when a woman steps into a cockpit, when she checks instruments, trusts training, takes off into uncertain skies, Amelia is there in the confidence, in the refusal to shrink, in the belief that the horizon is not a boundary, but an invitation. She never asked the world for permission, and by doing so she gave permission to millions. The world kept moving, but her absence settled into history like a held breath. Newspapers moved on, wars began, ended, new heroes rose, yet her name never softened. It stayed sharp, alive, spoken with wonder and ache, because Amelia Earhart represented something unfinished, a sentence the sky refused to end. In classrooms, young girls traced maps with fingers, following routes across oceans, imagining what it meant to sit alone, surrounded by nothing but clouds. Encouraged teachers spoke of physics, navigation, discipline, but the lesson underneath was quieter, that limits are often illusions repeated until believed, and that one woman chose not to believe them. Aviation evolved, planes became faster, safer, skies busier, but every advancement carried the echo of early risk, of fabric wings, open cockpits, and pilots who trusted instinct as much as instruments. Amelia belonged to that fragile era, where flying required faith and precision equal measure, and her mastery of both changed expectations forever. She was not fearless. She spoke openly about fear, about preparation. As its antidote, she warned against romance without responsibility, urging women to train harder, to know machines deeply, to respect danger, rather than deny it. This honesty became part of her power. She did not sell fantasy. She offered reality earned through discipline. Long after her disappearance, investigations continued. Expeditions launched theories, debated bones, analyzed radios, studied islands, searched. Some wanted closure, others wanted certainty. But perhaps the greatest truth was already clear. She had lived exactly as she believed, moving forward, accepting risk, refusing to be small. Her legacy reached beyond aviation into culture, language, imagination. She became shorthand for daring, for independence, for women who choose paths without maps. She showed that ambition and grace are not opposites, that femininity is not diminished by strength, that visibility can be used to widen doors rather than decorate walls. Women pilots multiplied, engineers, astronauts, commanders, citing her as spark, not idol, but starting point. She had normalized the impossible by doing it calmly, methodically, without apology, and normalization is the most powerful form of change. When the first women entered space, the connection was unmistakable, the same trust in training, the same acceptance of uncertainty, the same understanding that exploration is not conquest, but curiosity. Disciplined and brave Amelia had aimed for the sky, but her influence escaped gravity. She left behind journals, letters, words filled with resolve, humor, humility. She wrote not as legend, but as worker of her craft, always learning, always preparing, always aware of responsibility. Her voice reminds us that greatness is not sudden, it is practiced. In the end, perhaps the mystery of her disappearance mirrors the truth of her life. She was always ahead of certainty, always moving faster than explanation, leaving the world, catching up behind her, trying to understand what she had already accepted, that progress is a risk worth taking. Her story does not ask us to mourn, it asks us to move, to plan, to prepare, to dare intelligently, to refuse limits quietly, firmly, consistently. Amelia Earhart did not conquer the sky, she joined it, and in doing so she changed the ground beneath us all. The horizon stretches endlessly, the sun rises over familiar landscapes, yet every day feels like a first flight. Amelia Earhart's spirit moves with every takeoff, every lift into open air, every moment. When a woman steps into the unknown and trusts preparation over fear, she becomes more than memory. She becomes presence, guiding hands, steadying hearts, reminding us that courage is not loud, it is deliberate and constant. In small towns and big cities across America, young girls watch model airplanes spin in the wind, track small planes across the sky, imagine themselves at the controls, learning that possibility is measured not in permission, but in willingness to act. They read about Amelia not as a distant figure, but as proof that ambition can fly. Even as aviation modernizes, her story remains relevant. The same principles hold: integrity, precision, courage, preparation, endurance. Each skill learned, each risk calculated, each decision weighed against knowledge, experience, and instinct. These are the legacies of someone who moved forward when many would have waited. Her life also teaches humility. She knew the power of limits, she respected the forces beyond her control, and she understood that mastery involves acceptance. As much as skill, she trusted herself. But she trusted the wind, the weather, the aircraft, the navigation, not recklessly, but wisely, and in doing so she modeled how greatness is balanced with care. Her image appears in documentaries, books, exhibitions, speeches, and still she is never fully contained. She lives in the rhythm of takeoffs, the planning of new routes, the careful calculations of students in labs and classrooms. She inspires debate and imagination, and through that she remains alive. Amelia Earhart is both symbol and individual. She was not flawless, she made mistakes, she experienced doubt, fatigue, disappointment. Yet she acted anyway, she pursued what mattered, she trained relentlessly, she encouraged others, and she left behind a path for anyone willing to follow beyond expectation. As decades pass, new generations encounter her story, each time finding resonance. She represents freedom and ambition, and the reminder that one person's courage can echo long after the body is gone, long after headlines fade, long after the engines have cooled. Her disappearance marks neither an end nor a failure. It is a punctuation, not a period, a pause for reflection, a challenge for those who remain to take up the mantle of curiosity, courage, and careful preparation, and to push beyond boundaries wherever they exist. Amelia Earhart lives not only in history, but in action. She exists in every lift of a plane into dawn, in every calculated risk taken with confidence, in every woman who chooses to chart a course previously unimagined, and who refuses to shrink when the world whispers limitations. Her life calls us to the sky, to the unknown, to the deliberate pursuit of ambition, to the realization that preparation and courage together can move humanity forward. She lifts into the sky again in imagination, in memory, in the hearts of those who follow her. The horizon stretches endlessly below, clouds ripple like oceans, and she moves through them with steady hands, calm mind, focused heart. Every mile flown is a lesson in trust, in preparation, in courage. Every engine hum a heartbeat, every wing flex a whisper telling us that limits are illusions waiting to be tested. She was never content with ordinary, she always looked further, farther, higher. The winds became companions, the maps guides, and every failure became a teacher, every storm a proving ground. She flew not to escape the world, but to understand it, to measure herself against forces larger than herself, to test what a human willing to act with discipline could endure. Her first solo flights were moments of quiet triumph, unseen by crowds, but known intimately by herself. She learned patience, attention to detail, foresight, skill, and timing. She learned that mistakes are teachers, that endurance is a muscle, that courage is not absence of fear, but action in spite of it. She built herself slowly, carefully, deliberately, until the sky became her proving ground and her classroom. When she crossed the Atlantic solo, the world noticed, but she treated it as routine, as necessity, as evidence that effort paired with skill yields results. She did not boast, she did not seek applause, she simply moved forward. She left behind a path for others that was tangible, visible, provable. Every flight a bridge spanning expectation and reality, showing women what they could achieve if they prepared and acted. Her preparation was meticulous, every instrument checked, every route studied, every emergency planned. She understood that freedom in the air required discipline on the ground. She trained her body for fatigue, her mind for calculation, her nerves for stress. She accepted responsibility, not lightly, but fully knowing that lives were metaphorically in her hands, the lives of women, watching the world, hoping to see proof that possibility existed. The final flight was the culmination of years of study, practice, courage, and ambition. It was never reckless, it was deliberate and brave, yet over the vast Pacific isolation pressed against her like a weight, silence, stretching into infinity, she trusted her instruments, she trusted her skills, she trusted herself. And she moved forward anyway, accepting that some outcomes could not be controlled, some endings were unknowable, but that motion itself was its own reward. When she disappeared, it was not a failure, it was transformation. It was the moment her presence became permanent in imagination. It was when the world realized that bravery is not measured by returns, but by willingness to risk what is known for what is possible. Her disappearance made her legend, but more importantly, it preserved her lessons, intact her methods, her preparation, her courage immortalized for generations. Every woman who follows a career in aviation remembers her. Every engineer inspired by determination sees her fingerprints in design. Every teacher showing a student how to calculate a flight path whispers her principles. Without naming them, the work continues, because she set the precedent of refusing limits, accepting risk, embracing preparation, and acting anyway. Her legacy travels faster than planes. It moves through classrooms, libraries, museums, conversations. Every time someone looks up and asks, could I do that? Could I fly? Could I move beyond fear? Could I prepare meticulously and act boldly? Her answer is already given in the miles. She logged the hours. She studied the discipline she embodied. She teaches that discipline is not drudgery, but liberation, that preparation is power, that courage is cultivated, and that the unknown is not something to fear, but something to approach respectfully, intentionally, and with focus, that failure is not a loss if effort is wholehearted, and that the horizon is always an invitation, not a boundary. Even decades later, her story continues to expand in influence. It grows in meaning as aviation evolves, as technology progresses, as social structures shift. Women find in her example a model not of perfection, but of excellence achieved through perseverance, not of fame, but of integrity, not of glory, but of deliberate, courageous, skillful action. Her life demonstrates that obstacles are not permanent, and that societal expectations can be challenged and redefined. She shows that influence is not given, but earned through persistent action, that courage is contagious, that preparation multiplied by ambition changes outcomes, that leadership is proven in quiet moments of focus more than in applause. When Amelia Earhart vanished, she entered myth, but when she lived, she created reality. She transformed expectation. She rewrote what was possible. She trained meticulously. She acted deliberately. She refused to be constrained by gender or fear. She moved forward, and in that movement, she created motion for others. Modern pilots, astronauts, scientists, engineers, explorers all carry pieces of her methodology in their hands, in their thinking, in their discipline, in their bravery. They inherit her principles. Even if they never hear her name repeated, they fly with the knowledge that preparation matters, courage matters, endurance matters, integrity matters, and that limits are often waiting for someone brave enough to test them. Her story teaches us that preparation is love for the craft, that courage is love for possibility, that action in alignment with skill and vision transforms not just the individual, but the world, that influence is multiplied when risk is embraced responsibly, that greatness comes from persistence, not from accident, and that legacy is built in hours of quiet commitment, not in moments of spectacle. She embodies motion forward, trust in skill, respect for forces beyond control, relentless study, courage applied, discipline, intelligent risk, and vision combined. She represents the intersection of human capability and aspiration. She is not just a pilot, she is a principle, she is a method, she is a call to act, to rise to challenges, to accept responsibility for one's own ambition. Amelia Earhart moves through history not only in remembrance, but in every lift-off into unknown skies, in every calculated flight over oceans, mountains, deserts. She moves with those who continue to test boundaries, who continue to fly further, faster, higher. She is not gone, she is in motion. She is in preparation. She is in courage. She is in those willing to act. And so the sky remains hers not because of legend, but because of action, because of discipline, because of fearless study, because of moving forward when the outcome is uncertain, because of teaching by example, because of living fully deliberately, and because of refusing to accept limits imposed by others. She claims the horizon for all who follow. Her story is complete not in landing, but in flight not in return, but in legacy not in being seen, but in influencing what is possible. She teaches that every careful, calculated, courageous step forward expands possibility for others, that preparation is power and motion is freedom, that courage and skill together create transformation, and that the horizon is always waiting for someone brave enough to rise. She was born into chains before she could speak, before she could understand the meaning of freedom. Her body was not hers, her name was assigned, her life controlled by others. She woke every morning to the weight of invisible shackles, to fear passed down like a family heirloom, to the quiet violence of work, punishment, separation. She learned early that survival required vigilance, obedience, endurance. Childhood was filled with brutality. A blow to the head from a heavy weight changed her forever, leaving her with visions, seizures, pain that never fully went away. Yet in the darkness her spirit grew, her dreams whispered to her in flashes of light and sound guidance, faith. She called it her calling, a sense that she was meant for more than the plantation, more than labor, more than silence, more than fear. She watched families torn apart, children sold, mothers whipped, fathers taken away. Her own family lived under constant threat. She learned the signs of cruelty, the moments to hide, the ways to survive, the secret paths through fields and forests. She learned endurance, but also something stronger, courage, a sense that chains could be resisted in small ways, that hope could be kept alive even when everything seemed lost. Escape was dangerous, nearly impossible. She waited until the right moment, until opportunity aligned with courage. One night, she stepped into darkness, walking through forests, swamps, rivers, guided by stars, by intuition, by whispers of faith, each step a decision between life and death, every sound a potential signal of pursuit. She moved alone, but she was never truly alone. The memory of generations who had suffered guided her, the hope of those still enslaved called her forward. Crossing into freedom was not an ending, it was a beginning. She could breathe, she could rest. But she could not forget, she could not leave behind those still trapped. She vowed to return, she would risk her life again, and again to bring others to safety. Every return journey a gamble, every footstep an act of defiance, every night spent hiding a testament to courage. She became conductor of the Underground Railroad, leading dozens, sometimes hundreds, through forests, rivers, swamps, paths that were dangerous not only because of geography, but because of men hunting slaves for bounty. She carried no weapons, but her courage, her knowledge, her meticulous planning, her trust in humanity, and in the network that supported her every life, rescued a victory, every step calculated, every risk intentional. She moved people at night using signals, songs, whispers, leaves on paths, knowledge of terrain, faith in helpers at safe houses. Her work required endurance, patience, strategy, strength, and compassion. She was relentless, tireless, often risking herself. More than anyone else, those she led often did not know the path. But she did, and she guided them forward through darkness and uncertainty. During the Civil War, she did not step aside. She became a scout, spy, nurse, guiding Union troops, providing intelligence she had earned through years of observing patterns of land movement, escape routes, knowledge that few others possessed. She led raids, freeing hundreds. More, she became legend, not seeking recognition, but serving justice with precision and bravery. Even after the war, she continued to help others, establishing homes for freed people, supporting families. She never married, settling comfortably. She lived modestly, always giving. She was revered by some, ignored by many. Official recognition slow in coming, yet she never sought fame. Her work was the reward. She measured life by lives saved, by freedom expanded, by courage demonstrated. Her mind never stopped planning, strategizing, teaching others, escaping detection, and always moving forward. She trusted her instincts, trained her body and her spirit. She moved in darkness and light. She understood danger, but she refused paralysis. She understood risk, but she measured it. She understood fear, but she acted anyway. She became a model of disciplined courage. Her story teaches that freedom is not given, it is claimed, that courage is not absence of fear, it is action in spite of fear, that leadership is service, preparation, intelligence, integrity, and empathy combined, that influence comes not from loudness, but from persistence, that the arc of justice is shaped by repeated acts of bravery. She demonstrates that ordinary humans can achieve extraordinary things through preparation, courage, selflessness, and vision. She shows that legacy is built over decades in consistent effort, that one person can shift destinies, that chains are not permanent unless accepted as such, that hope can be a weapon stronger than fear. Generations after her life continue to learn from her example. Schools, museums, biographies inspire children, adults, women, men to fight injustice, to act courageously, to plan meticulously, to trust intuition, to value lives, to move forward. When society says stay put, when tradition says obey, when fear says stop, she shows that moral courage is timeless. Harriet Tubman is not a single figure frozen in history. She is active, she is present, she is motion. She is in every rescue mission, every fight for justice, every clandestine path followed by those seeking freedom, every teaching passed from mentor to student, every act of deliberate courage. She lives not as legend only, but as principle, as method, as model of sustained bravery. Even modern activists in social justice, civil rights, law enforcement, humanitarian work draw inspiration from her tactics, her planning, her fearlessness, her strategic patience, her empathy, her insistence on preparation and knowledge, her refusal to be silenced, her ability to act decisively in dangerous moments. She shows that courage and intelligence must coexist for impact to be meaningful. Her life demonstrates that preparation is power, that knowledge is a shield, that moral clarity guides action, that empathy expands reach, and that determination combined with methodical planning changes not only individual lives, but society itself, that every life saved is a monument, that every risk taken deliberately strengthens the fabric of freedom. She is not only hero of history, she is blueprint for action. She is the rhythm of movement across obstacles, the careful planning of steps through uncertainty, the quiet calculation of risk and reward, the discipline to act repeatedly for greater good, the unwavering courage to return into danger again and again to rescue others. Her life is full of examples of every principle applied over decades. Her disappearance from physical presence does not erase influence. She continues through the people inspired by her, who repeat her strategies, adapt her methods, carry her spirit forward. She continues through systemic change influenced by acts of deliberate bravery. She continues in education, awareness, in moral courage, in personal choices of justice and action. She continues in principle, in legacy, in living example. Cleared in every hand extended, in every life rescued, in every system challenged, she is present not as myth, but as principle, as method, as guide. Her story is not a tale of legend, it is instruction, it is practice, it is manual for anyone seeking to act rightly in dangerous circumstances. It teaches preparation, planning, courage, action, empathy, leadership, intelligence, persistence, endurance, focus, humility, and strategic thinking. It teaches that one life devoted to freedom can ripple outward indefinitely. Even today, those who teach freedom, fight injustice, honor the principles she demonstrated, lead with courage and methodical planning, inspire others to act and change outcomes. They do not know the names of all the lives impacted, but they follow paths she blazed, consciously or unconsciously learning the enduring lesson that deliberate courage sustained over time transforms the world. She demonstrates that morality and action must be coupled, that intelligence without courage is ineffective, that courage without preparation is reckless, that leadership is service, that true impact is measured in results sustained, not momentary, that human potential is expansive if nurtured by discipline, purpose, knowledge, and empathy, that ordinary people achieve extraordinary change through consistent, deliberate, brave action. Her legacy lives in every person who chooses to act when fear whispers stop, when injustice threatens continue, when society says obey, when conscience says lead, when safety says retreat. She lives in those footsteps in every path. She moves through forests, swamps, rivers, guided by stars and whispers of faith, each step deliberate, each decision measured. She trusts her instincts, her knowledge, her courage. She carries others with her, their hopes heavy on her back, their fears balanced by her resolve. She becomes a bridge, a beacon, a living passage from chains to freedom. Every journey back into danger sharpens her resolve, strengthens her skill, deepens her understanding. She learns to read terrain signals, danger patterns of pursuit. She plans meticulously every crossing, every safe house, every step calculated. She understands that lives depend on preparation, that courage alone is not enough, that intelligence, discipline, and empathy must coexist. Families follow her through darkness, trusting her guidance. She never falters, she never loses. She becomes legend in her own time. But she does not pause to celebrate. She moves forward tirelessly, repeatedly. She becomes the embodiment of sustained bravery, action, courage, methodical intelligence, moral clarity, and compassion. During the Civil War, she continues her work, not as a commander seeking glory, but as a strategist serving justice, as a nurse guiding Union forces with insight gained from years in shadows. She leads raids, rescues hundreds. More, she adapts, learns, teaches, inspires, every action deliberate, every mission guided by principles she has refined through decades of risk. After the war, she builds a life dedicated to others. She establishes homes for freed people, supports families. She lives modestly. She continues to mentor, teach, guide. She shows that courage is not only in dramatic acts, but in daily decisions sustained over time in service to others. She shows that legacy is built by repeated deliberate action, not by momentary applause. Her story is instruction, it is method, it is model for courage, intelligence, preparation, empathy, moral clarity, and relentless pursuit of justice. She demonstrates that ordinary humans achieve extraordinary outcomes when they act with skill, knowledge, and fearless resolve. She teaches that freedom is not given, it is claimed, and that responsibility accompanies privilege. Every generation learns from her example. Schools, museums, biographies teach her story, not as myth, but as model. Young activists, pilots, leaders, citizens internalize lessons of planning, courage, intelligence, persistence, endurance, discipline, focus, moral clarity, and careful risk management. She shows that lives can be transformed and systems challenged by consistent, deliberate action. Her life proves that fear is not absence of courage, it is the canvas on which courage is painted, that preparation multiplies impact, that empathy expands effectiveness, that morality guides strategy, that action sustained over decades creates real change, and that ordinary humans carry the power to alter history through focused, brave, intelligent effort. She is alive in every rescue, every act of defiance, every plan executed with careful courage, every young person inspired to fight injustice, every leader who acts ethically despite risk. She is motion, principle, example, method, legacy. She teaches that preparation, courage, discipline, empathy, and persistence together transform lives, communities, nations. Harriet Tubman did not merely escape chains, she returned repeatedly into danger to free others. She did not act once, she acted decades. She did not seek fame, she sought justice. She did not hope for recognition, she created reality. She did not move blindly, she moved with strategy. She did not falter. She led, she did not shrink, she inspired. She did not die quietly, she lives forever in action, in principle, in courage, in motion. Her story is complete not in headlines, not in monuments, not in fleeting recognition, but in sustained influence in the lives she saved, in the inspiration she leaves for generations, in the methods she perfected, in the courage she embodied, in the example she set for all who would follow her path and carry forward the work of freedom. She teaches us that bravery is deliberate, that preparation amplifies courage, that intelligence guides risk, that empathy strengthens impact, that persistence achieves change, that moral clarity directs action, that ordinary humans can create extraordinary outcomes when they act deliberately, consistently, fearlessly, and selflessly, that legacy is measured in lives transformed and justice expanded. Harriet Tubman lives not only in history, but in every act of courage, every carefully planned rescue, every fight for justice, every mentor guiding others, every person who chooses to act when fear whispers stop, when injustice threatens, continue when safety urges retreat. She lives in those footsteps, in those choices, in those lives transformed, in the world altered by deliberate, courageous, intelligent action. She is immortal not in legend, but in principle and impact. Her life is a roadmap, a method, a call to action, a model of how to navigate danger with intelligence and courage, to act ethically, persistently, and effectively, to save lives, to challenge oppression, to expand freedom, to lead with discipline and empathy, to transform ordinary existence into extraordinary change. She remains forever present in the world she shaped through her deliberate, fearless motion. She is freedom in motion, courage in action, intelligence in strategy, empathy in execution, discipline in endurance, persistence in decades of repeated effort, leadership without title, influence without applause. She teaches that ordinary humans achieve extraordinary change when they commit to moral clarity, deliberate action, careful preparation, and fearless persistence, that the arc of history bends toward justice when guided by such determined hands and hearts.